I'm back again, give it another shot. Hopefully this time out YouTube doesn't screw up the video like it did just yesterday. So apologies on that one, guys, but we're back again to take a look at this week's live weekly event. This time out, of course, as we can see, we're over on Ibiza and we've had to make a new purchase for this very mission, or this very event that we're going to come into, and we have bought the Ferrari Dino. Now, we had the choice, the Ferrari Dino or the Lancia Stratos. There's about 1 million credits of difference between the two vehicles. I've drove the Lancia already in game on a delivery mission. As of yet, haven't drove the Dino. And just a couple of days, or a couple of events ago, we were of course given the option between the Dino or the 911. I believe that was the mission, correct me if I am wrong. And yeah, I didn't choose the Dino, and it felt like this time out was an opportunity to rectify the fact that we didn't have the Dino in the garage. A fantastic car, quite a historical car. I think anybody that knows the Ferrari history will of course agree. So yeah, this time out we're here to play about, first of all, in the Ferrari Dino. Then we're going to head on over to a second race, and it's an interesting race, but first of all, like we mentioned, the Ferrari Dino is the weapon of choice, 0 to 60s. A 2-lap dry circuit race. Now, interestingly, 51% gravel, 51% asphalt, 49% gravel. Like we've seen in yesterday's race with the Shelby Daytona Cobra Coupe and the Ford GT40 Mark 1, it looked like it was going to be a very difficult race, and it turned out to actually be quite a lot of fun. Now, coming into it here with the Dino specifically, well, I've kind of got the same mindset. Perhaps it's actually just going to be a lot of fun to use this thing on-road and off-road at the same time in the 246 GTS Dino against the Lancia Stratos. With this, of course, having a few upgrades attached to it. Haven't built a tune for it, just put on some upgrades after buying the car. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what kind of performance, what kind of note essentially we can get out of the Dino. Of course, trying to launch it off the line with the all-road tyres, it's always going to be a bit tricky, but I did want to have that comfort blanket of the all-road tyres fitted to this one, in case, you know, it's a bit of a handful in the off-road sections, which I in fact manage it is going to be the case. I do imagine, sorry guys, struggling with the cold here. I do imagine that the AI are pretty much going to be set up the same all-road tyres fitted to the vehicles to make sure they can get around these off-road sections nicely. A couple of nice little sections to start us on the off-road part just there on the gravel, throwing the Dino into the left-handers, right-handers, just managing to keep enough traction, a little bit of handbrake to get it around the right-hand hairpin just there. And now we're onto the gravel once again. Can we actually try and get a bit of traction here? Yes, we can. Use the gearbox, step it up to try and get some traction, but as soon as we come onto those curbs, there's a little jump there. You're going to have to remember that for lap number 2, because we lost all stability. Just like this thing drift itself right away around that right-hander just there. As we do come uphill, the back end is very leery on this car, so we've got a hell of a lot of power going through with a lack of traction with these all-road tyres fitted, and I had no idea where I was going there. That collapsible wall came at me very quickly, and I lost all sense of direction to where I was going, and I'm not doing too well as we do come back off-road once again. Let's try and get this race back on track. No pun intended. Here we go. We are back on the off-road track right here, trying to carry as much speed around the right-hander, styling out a big drift around the right-hander, bring it back round for the left-hander, into the right-hander again. Yeah, much like yesterday's race in the, what were we in, God almighty, the GT40 against the Shelby Daytona Cobra Coupe. Yeah, I was quite hesitant going into that race. I thought, you know what, it's going to be an absolute disaster. It turned out to be a bag of fun, and largely put, it's what I'm... missed the corner. It's largely what I'm experiencing here once again with the Ferrari Dino. It's actually a lot of fun making sure we switch up the gear nice and quickly to try and get some traction, or that there will happen. This is a very tail-happy car that is going to require some semi-slicks or maybe even full slicks to actually get some traction with it, but it's not a bad thing. These old naturally aspirated vehicles are absolutely fantastic, and this is exactly what I do want to see. But as we are off-road, you know, we've got the all-road tyres, we can have a little bit of fun here, throw it into some of the right-handers, left-handers, kind of stick into second gear there, maybe be more beneficial moving up towards a third or a fourth gear to try and get some traction nice and early. Have to drop it back down. It doesn't have the power to pull it through the, you know, or it doesn't have the torque rather to pull it through the laboursome third gear that it does have. back into second, try and get it around that right-hander. Just too much of a drift going on there. Had to back off the throttle as we do come uphill. Yeah, I do think, you know, with a bit of a tune, this gearbox could actually be set up a lot better. We carry too much speed there. Hopefully it doesn't punish us all too much. Nope, back to the race route. Can we get onto it? There we go. Get that checkpoint. Just managing to scrape that one out. This is a very tricky race, although it's a very simple track. With this very specific car, it is a tricky race, and I actually love that. I think that's set up beautifully well for us to actually come back, rinse and repeat this race. Not often I would say it with a lot of the classic cars, although I do love racing classic cars. They don't tend to be the races I want to come back time and time again, rinse and repeat. But that one there does feel like it's going to be one of those races. Set this Dino up for that one specifically, try and get the back end under control a little bit better and set some better times on the board. Whereas we already know we've already got 40 points on the board for this live weekly event, just 10 more required, where we can then head on over to the 5th and final race for the live weekly events on the Ibiza map. It is indeed. Now hopefully all the graphics are coming through okay for you guys today. I can only apologise about yesterday. Everything was fine in the recording, in the edit. It wasn't until it went to YouTube, and YouTube for some reason absolutely crucified the upload that we put out yesterday. So fingers crossed today comes out a lot better and you guys have a nice, simple, seamless video to watch. But like we mentioned, we're going to head on over to the 5th and final race here. Ultimate Power 2-lap dry circuit race on asphalt, 100% asphalt. And it is the Lamborghini Huracan versus the Audi R8. Now of course there's many variants of the R8. There's rear wheel drives, there's all wheel drives, there's Decenniums, so it does leave the door open. What cars are we actually going to be able to use here? And when I come into the garage, as you guys can now see, I've got the Huracan Performante, I've got the R8 V10 RWS, the rear wheel drive variant. But you can see it actually leaves off the Decennium, the 4-wheel drive variant, and this does for me pose a bit of an issue. You've got a 4-wheel drive Huracan and a rear wheel drive Audi R8. It makes absolutely no sense here. We know that the 4-wheel drive cars essentially here are OP in game, and for me it's a no-brainer for this race specifically to take the Huracan Performante into what is undoubtedly going to be a very quick and very challenging race. We've already seen 1 minute 50s, 1 minute 52s on the leaderboard, so we know there's a challenge to be had with this race. Should come as no surprise, most, if not all, supercar races in this game, well, they tend to be, in my opinion, the best races and the most challenging races in game. Now of course, I've got a very well very well tuned Huracan Performante, so I'm kind of coming in with a big advantage here that, you know, the AI aren't going to be a challenge, and I feel like I can come into this race and set a very challenging time on the leaderboard. Maybe not in the first ever, I'm not too familiar with what track it is that we're going to have here. Yep, definitely could have been quicker around that roundabout, but I feel coming back to this race specifically, have a little bit of a rinse and repeat throughout it, like I tend to do many times. You know, I feel that there's a huge opportunity to have a very good, very challenging time on the leaderboard. 1 minute 50, 1 minute 52 being the top time so far. You know, I do feel that this is one of the races that we really should be pushing up towards the top 5, the top 10, and again, maybe even just pushing all the way up towards that podium. I don't think it's going to be this race specifically. You know, doing the live com and trying to get the best performance out of a car for me has not been the way to go so far. I've still got a lot of work to improve on that one. I don't even think I have all of the upgraded parts fitted to this one coming into the race. In all honesty, I think we're sitting about 900 RP. Correct me if I'm wrong, you will have seen that before we came into the race, so I don't think we've got a fully tuned car. All of the excuses now out of the way. We can come back and get a challenging time on the leaderboard. We might even see where we land up by the time this race is over and done with, but I don't expect to be up anywhere near the podium or the top 5. I don't even expect to be in the top 10 in all honesty. I am leaving a hell of a lot of time on the board, but that being said, it's a good race. I'm not actually all too familiar with that race, whether it's a new one for this live weekly event or it is a race that I'm just not familiar of doing all too much in game. But it's a nice layout, it's a nice map that we've got there, good challenging turns, you know, some that just creep up on top of you, and of course the long freeway sections where we can really see how well we have managed to tune some of our cars here. Absolutely no surprise that the Huracan Performante has been fantastic. Where of course we do manage to then bag the 5th and final set of points for this week's live weekly event for that fantastic sticker. Brothers in Hood. It's a sticker. We knew that's what we were getting after all. It should come as absolutely no surprise that that's the rewards. It is what it is. Maybe that needs to be addressed in time. However, looking at the race itself, like I said, I didn't expect that one to be the fastest time on the leaderboard. Let me quickly move the camera out of the way just here. We can see that Alchemy with a 1:50, Paku with a 1:52, Cappy with a 1:52, Mishu with a 1:54. Some fantastically close times up the top of that leaderboard. 6 seconds between 1st and 10th place. We're down in 85th with a 2:08. Like I said, I didn't expect to have the quickest time on the board in that race specifically, but it's one I am most definitely going to come back and challenge myself to try and push up into the top 10, the top 5, and even try and reach the podium. But all in all, a fantastic set of races over on Ibiza, and I would say as a whole, a fantastic set of races that we've been given for this week's live weekly event. The 3 races over in Hong Kong Island, and I'm going to a part of the map I'm not supposed to be at. Okay, yeah, the 3 races over in Hong Kong Island, and of course the 2 races here on Ibiza. I feel like those were absolutely fantastic races. You guys let me know your thoughts on them. I do feel, you know, the most recent events that we've kind of had here, we've seen a big change in the dynamic of the races that we've been getting, the layout of the race, the cars that were selected for the races, a head-to-head essentially. You know, we've just seen it there with the Audi R8 versus the Huracan. Perhaps it could have been a bit better balanced with the 4-wheel drive R8, yeah. Or, you know, even this race that we had with the Dino versus the Stratos, having this new balance of this car versus that car, I think it is... That's a crash. I do think that should be the way forward with some of these live weekly events. You guys, let me know your thoughts on it. Have you been enjoying the change that we have seen over the last few weeks? For me, I think it's improved on something that was already fantastic in Test Drive. Hope you guys have enjoyed today's video. I hope it has reached YouTube okay, and it is not as messed up as yesterday's was. Before you leave, as always guys, smash that like button, subscribe, and of course stay tuned for more updates on Test Drive Unlimited. So look out.